So War Tycoon does have a variety of vehicles in order to actually overcome different scenarios. It's a very nice way to actually add vehicles because it allows us to use something different every single time. However, there are some vehicles in this game which a lot of people did not like being added into the game, or they just in general create way too many issues compared to what they actually offer for the game in terms of the positives. And today I'll also be talking about some vehicles which are just heavily unrealistic and should have never been added into the game. So anyway, today I'll be covering everything that I don't think should have ever been added into War Tycoon. So firstly, we are going to be starting with the SR72 Darkstar, and if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I really hate the fact that this was added just like the whole entire community. And the reasons being is because War Tycoon has recently just been adding a lot of vehicles which were from 6th generation or just something from the far future. Why couldn't they add a vehicle like the SR71 which actually had some military testing and actually was flown before, unlike something that's literally a complete concept that was never really built and probably will never be built in the next at least 10 years. I don't really understand why the developers would add this instead of something that the community was actually asking. I swear the SR72 Darkstar also had almost 0 suggestions and no one really asked for this, but instead they just decided to give us this thing, which really, if this thing had a cannon, it would have literally just been a Seahawk 2.0. I'm really glad that they actually avoided this useless drama by just giving it a multi-role missiles and made it the fastest plane in the game. I think it was a nice way to add it, but either way, I'm still very salty and kind of annoyed that they add something like this instead of a vehicle that everyone wants. And really, it does not bring too much use into the meta, and I don't really understand why it's still in the game. Now, the next vehicle which they added into the game, which I'm of course not going to be a fan of, is going to be the Seahawk. I don't understand why this thing was implemented in the way it was. I would have been fine if they actually added a real-life representative of the Seahawk, but instead they decided to add something that has a literal gun, and then with this it does have missiles which pretty much just break the game's balancing, because the best definition of this vehicle is just going to be the best vehicle in the game right now. It simply can just ambush an enemy with its 6 missiles and kill everybody, which literally just breaks everything that this game stands for. And then once again, another thing is they added a Gatling gun, like I previously said, which makes absolutely no sense to be on a vehicle like the Seahawk. They could have just called it good with its 6 multi-role missiles, stealth and insane speed, but no, they decided to add something extra, which literally just contributes to the game not being in the best place in terms of air-to-air combat as of this current moment. This vehicle really does ruin all the fun of it, in my personal opinion, because all it does is just come in, shoot you with all of its missiles, and then you're pretty much dead. And then with this, it's pretty much the best dogfighter in the game, just like the F-22. It really does not make much sense. Now, moving into the garage, and this is where things do get quite interesting. And you guys already know I hate the Patriot, all of us hate the Patriot, we never thought it should have been added into the game, and the simple reason being is because the Panzer's one was already balanced, and it was actually quite welcome by the community, because we did have an anti-air vehicle that wasn't too OP. This thing was fine as it was, but then they decided to add in the Patriot. However, the main thing which we're going to be talking about is going to be the Type 625E. I have absolutely no idea why this thing is even in the game, and the fact it has 0 use really does prove my point once again. We had already 3 anti-air vehicles in the game, so the developers think that it's not enough and they decided to just add a 4th one. It really does not make too much sense to me, because in reality, the Type 625E, it tries to kind of be a different vehicle by being a more versatile Panzer with having less missiles and more powerful Gatling gun and just a smoke and faster speed. That's the only thing it really brought to the table, because we had so many anti-air vehicles and developers really felt like we needed another one that's more versatile. We really didn't. Anti-air was already annoying as it was, and adding this vehicle into the game has actually made things a little bit worse as well. But seeing that it's not even used that much, it really does justify my point that this thing should have never been added, because no one in reality actually likes this. Now, moving into the tanks, and I know a lot of people want to talk about the Buratino, a lot of people don't like the way in which it was designed, the way in which it was done, but to be honest, it does serve its unique purpose in the meta. However, there is one vehicle which had to be the most rushed thing I have ever seen being added to the game, and that is the Polish concept light tank, which is the PLO-1. I'm not even going to be talking about the fact that this vehicle was never actually made in the real world, and this thing was supposed to be one of the strongest tanks in the world made by Poland, but to be honest, honest, as someone that's literally Polish, I don't like this tank being into the game, and the simple reasons being is because it was absolutely butchered in terms of its balancing and the way in which was done. Basically, when it first was added, it basically served a purpose of being a free-to-play Abrams X, but after the developers started adding better tanks, this thing really just got power crept, and it's just left behind not even having all of its firepower, because in real life, this thing was supposed to be a stealthy tank, and it's also supposed to have grenade launchers and a lot of other different types of technologies, but in the game, it's just a tank with an explosive machine gun and a cannon, nothing else. I guess it's speedy, but really that doesn't bring anything new to the table. The Pilo one does not provide any value, and once again, I don't think this thing should have ever been added in the way it was. I feel like it really does need a redesign and revamp, and maybe it could stay in the game once it does get revamped, but right now, it really does not serve a single purpose, and every time I see this on the battlefield, I literally laugh, because it's literally just a free kill. Now, moving into another vehicle, and this time it's going to be a helicopter, and I'm going to be covering the Invictus. And a lot of people are probably wondering why I'm not talking about the Raider X. I'll make that clear in just a second. The Invictus helicopter is pretty much just, once again, another one of those prototype vehicles, or vehicles that were never actually created in real life because their plans were cancelled. And my personal problem with the Invictus actually being into the game is that the developers really did not have a single idea with what they wanted to do with this vehicle. All it had is a little plane cannon and 8 missiles, pretty much the same as a Eurocopter. So this basically tried to serve itself a purpose of being a better Eurocopter, even though the Eurocopter was already power crept on very heavily. But once again, the Invictus just does not provide enough value. It doesn't give us anything new, unlike a lot of other vehicles which we have in the game, like the addition of the Mi-28. It was great because it gave us a versatile vehicle with different types of missiles. The Super Hind came in with its insane firepower and also giving us bombs, but this one really did not give us anything. And going back to the point about the Raider X and why I actually did not mind this thing being in the game, it's pretty simple because it does actually provide a purpose, and it's something new that was added to the table. This thing is the fastest helicopter in the game, it has the best maneuverability, it has very good firepower, and it's overall just really good at countering planes and ground vehicles. It actually serves some kind of purpose, which is the only reason I'm actually fine with this being added to the game. The Invictus doesn't do that, it's just certainly one of those prototype vehicles which has actually been added for absolutely no reason, and once again, it doesn't bring anything new, it's just supposed to be a much more, I guess, stealthy helicopter and nothing more than that. Now, coming up with the second to last vehicle which I'm going to be covering is going to be the J36, and the reason why I don't like the J36 actually being added into the game is because simply nobody has asked for another 6th generation plane to be added in this game, but once again, they decided to add something that's like completely out of the blue, which no one actually knows about. The J36, there has been almost no information about it, we know absolutely nothing about this plane, so once again, why would you add something that no one absolutely knows anything about? So another thing which I also hate about this vehicle is simply that it's so hard to use and it doesn't justify its purpose in any way. If you're going to be attacking people on the ground, many other planes do it better, like the A-10. If you're going to be dogfighting, the F-22 does it better. If you're going to be countering ships, there is the F-45 which even does it better. The anti-ship missile is not even this useful in this game. If they actually added like another jet which was maybe 4th generation which had anti-ship missiles, that could have been much cooler to add, but the J36, no one really likes this thing, and this is why I'm going to be putting it as the second to last on this list as one of the vehicles which I would never want to see in this game, but unfortunately it's here. And now moving into the last thing I'm going to be mentioning as vehicles which I would never want to have added in the game in the way they were, and that's going to be the Hovercrafts. Okay, can you explain to me, what is this thing, the AVH Reaper? I have never seen a vehicle like this in real life. This seems like this vehicle was just completely made up, and I wouldn't be surprised if it actually ended up being made up. It's not a real hovercraft, and same with all these other free hovercrafts, but the difference between them is actually going to be the fact that they have their own use and they actually feel like real hovercrafts. This thing literally just feels like a Cybertruck taken from 2050, and it really does not make much sense why this thing is in the game. Once again, another one which I have to talk about is going to be the HACV Overlord. It does actually hit the realism just a little bit more, but I still don't like this thing actually being added to the game by just simple facts of being way too overpowered as a hovercraft, and that's pretty much all my reasons for it. Of course, it's a Game Pass, it does make sense that they have to make it somewhat good, but the fact that they basically gave it a somewhat level of firepower just does not make too much sense as a hovercraft. I feel like the hovercrafts in general were actually handled pretty poorly, because what they're made for in real life and what their main plans actually are is not firepower, but it's actually just easier transport. but do you guys see a single hovercraft in this game that does transport in this game? Exactly, that's not a single one. So I really would love to see some hovercrafts that do actually do their job properly added into this game, which are just much more realistic instead of keep on adding made up vehicles, because all of these three right here are just clearly made up, but I don't really mind these first three. I just care about the HACV Overlord and the Reaper. Mainly the Reaper is my main problem here. Anyway, leave me some comments down below of some other top 5 videos or maybe top 10 videos or really any cool theories I could talk about. It will be kind of cool to bring some of your ideas into the videos. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and thanks so much to my channel members.